Pathways movement, which is part of why we're here. What we're trying to do is make college a bit easier to navigate through, right? You're still taking your classes and all that, but sometimes when you enter college, there's just so many choices of majors, you get overwhelmed. This creates just an easier path for you to follow. And I'm gonna do is share a screen. I'm gonna do my part. I'm gonna split back with Carolyn. She's another counselor as well. I'm gonna do first part, she's gonna do the next part. We'll go back and forth a little bit. Hopefully I get the shared screen correct. Let's see here. And let's see, present. Now you saw my good slides. All right, do you see it? Are we good? Okay, awesome, so far so good. All right, so again, why are we here? It's how to choose a major and based on your interests and let me get this thing out of the way here, sorry. Based on your interests and strengths using a guided pathways approach. Now, some of you have already identified a major, perhaps your English or communications or whatever it might be, but this is another way to kind of look at it, maybe reaffirm what you were thinking or maybe explore within this particular pathway. We'll talk about what LPPs are, which might be a new term for you. It's pretty new to the campus. We want to make sure you all understand what's going on. And you'll learn directly from professors on how to turn your interest into skills in their particular field. So it's really going to be a great way to ask the questions that you have, or we're going to maybe present you with questions you never thought about, right? This is the time to explore. The main thing, I was trained in my background. So I was a sociology major and I received a master's in counseling and then a PhD in education. But I was thinking about an English major when I was an undergrad. So I did well in my English classes. So that was a possible thing for me. I explored different ideas. And that's what you're doing right now. You're exploring ideas, you're seeing what you're naturally talented at. And the areas where you're not naturally talented at, maybe you can still push a little bit just to see how far you're gonna go. But the main thing I was trained in my undergrad was soar with your strengths and manage your weaknesses. Whatever you're naturally talented at, that's what you really want to focus in on growing those skills that you've already been accumulating throughout your life. Some of you just naturally, you just develop this particular way, and in college, that's the way to enhance those things. And the way I look at it, I do a lot of traveling, and that's one of the benefits. When we look at careers, one of the benefits for me in education, outside of course, working with students, is I get to get summers off and travel, and I can come back and share my stories with everybody, right? Gives me perspective of the world. So any career that you pick, you're gonna have something called fringe benefits. So you're gonna look at your careers in a different way today. For me, when I travel, because I'm always like a career nerd, right? I'm thinking about education, I'm thinking about roles in society. And what I realized, around the world, everyone has had their role in society. So from ancient times to today, societies function on talents and interests of every member. Everybody plays a role. And the key is, like, what is your contribution? How are you going to add to our society and the world? And throughout time, as far as we can tell, there's always been artists, writers, politicians, educators, musicians. You can see the slide there, all these different things you can contribute. Right now, time and place, you have a lot more choices than you did 1,000 years ago or 2,000 years ago. And according to the US Department of Education, there's actually 1,200 majors that you can choose from. So there's a lot of choices. And again, it's lead with your strengths and interests. What is your best fit and what role do you see for yourself? But how do you choose? Well, first identify your interests and talents, then keep developing skills that enhance you. This is the further you go in education, it's not all about money, but it's about stability. I grew up in a low-income home, so I didn't really think about being rich. It was about being stable. And the further you go up in education, from an associate's degree, it's $56,000. From a high school diploma on average, these are people 25 years or older working full-time. Let's just round it up, about $50,000 a year for a high school graduate. But when you go up to a bachelor's degree, that averages about $80,000 a year. So that's $30,000 more per year. Some of you might stop at an associate's degree, and that's okay too, right? That's about $56,000. The biggest thing on the slide, again, the further you go, the more training you have, the more money you're going to earn throughout your life. And that'll increase your access to healthcare, that'll increase your safety around the neighborhoods that you're living. There's a lot of benefits to this. It also protects you from unemployment. Generally, the more training you have, the less likely a company will let you go, because it's hard to replace the training and skills that you bring into their organization. Will you make money? That's a lot of students ask. As this major, am I going to make money? Well, Here's what the research shows, because I've been telling people this for 20 years, and luckily we have it. The research demonstrates that yes, certain majors you make more money right when you finish college, like an engineering major or a computer science major. However, over time, an English major or philosophy major or communications major can make more money than an average engineer. And that's why fit is important. What you do with the skills and training you have in whatever career that you discover and pursue, that's where you're going to be successful. And when you wrap it up together, it's quality of life, and the income is great, because if you're in a wrong career, you might make a lot of money, but you may not be happy, and that takes a toll for yourself and your other goals. So the research demonstrates that enhance these skills and follow a career that fits you. Otherwise, you're going to not be as happy as you normally would have. Now I'm going to hand this over to Carolyn, and she's going to talk about the top 10 skills employers look for in college graduates.
Thanks, Kevin. Yeah, so my name is Carolyn Darren. I'm a counselor here at GCC. I work in academic counseling and career counseling. And I wanted to share this, this slide about the top 10 skills employers look for in recent college graduates, because a lot of students think that their major matters a whole lot as far as what type of job they're going to be eligible for once they graduate. And think of the major as something that can enhance you. But these skills, as you can see from the list, these are things that you can learn in almost any major. And so again, don't feel like if you major in something like English or philosophy that you can only become like a teacher or a professor, because you're going to have really great transferable skills that you can gain from any major. Can you switch the slide, Kevin? Mm-hmm. So something else to think about as you are considering what major you might want to pursue are some different career theories and also some personality theories that you want to take into account. Like Kevin kept mentioning, you want to really think about what you're good at and what you enjoy, because you're probably going to enjoy studying it more, and you'll probably be better at it professionally. So we're just going to go over really quickly a couple of these theories just to kind of help you consider where you might fit. So the first theory I want to talk about is John Holland's theory of types, and this is specifically a career theory. In this theory, this is a very really quick overview, but he breaks people down into 6 types. They're realistic, investigative, artistic, social, enterprising, and conventional. Now, of course, we all have more than one type as part of our personality, but there are certain aspects of this that people will feel more comfortable with, more drawn to, and will want to have folded into their professional life. So for instance, in this language and communication, learning and professional pathway, these Holland codes that tend to correlate most with this is the social code. And that has to do, a motivation with that is helping others. Another one that tends to resonate with people who want to major in these types of things is artistic. And that does mean what it sounds like, as far as these people may have artistic ability. So they may be really good at writing or communicating or drawing, for instance, but they may also just be unconventional and independent thinkers. And so they tend to see the world in maybe a little bit not as conventional of ways. The last code I just want to draw our attention to for this purpose is enterprising. These people also like to work with others, but a little bit more in a leadership capacity. So the social person is going to want to help others and go into professions like teaching or nursing, and those are just 2 examples. Enterprising might be someone who wants to lead, so they might be in management or politics, but you can see how language and communication could be factors in all 3 of those traits. And then the next slide has another kind of another overview of the Holland code. Let me just switch my view. Yeah, so this one kind of goes into some of the shorthand that we use when we're talking about these codes. So like social is the helper, for instance, enterprising is the persuader. And this is just a very quick overview of the Holland code. If you want to really go more in depth with this, Glendale College has, thank you, Kevin, has just started offering a self-guided assessment called Career Coach. And you can take a 60-minute questionnaire. It's not a test. And it can show you like which of these tends to be strongest in your personality. And then you can make an appointment with a career counselor. We can talk to you about it and see like what this might mean as far as what major you might find as a good fit or a potential career you might want to pursue. I think that's all for Holland Code. So Kevin, do you want to take over for the
take on the intelligence? And that's a quick snapshot for Holland Codes, and there's so many resources that you can start the conversation with, and the Career Center can go more in depth on these things. And don't freak out if you're here and none of your Holland Codes match up with what you're here today. That's not, we're not trying to rattle you, right? But this is just kind of a way to point you in the right direction to think about these topics. It doesn't mean that you're destined to follow those projections. Those are just an idea. I call it like a compass. So the other thing I want to do quickly is called multiple intelligences. Now there's some I'm going to alter it a little bit because there's some, the research doesn't show it exactly that this is correct, but this is a starting point. So basically when they research multiple intelligence, they can't prove it, but there's something to it. And I'll tell you what I mean. These are types of, I would say, smarts, but they're more like skills. You've already been developing these things throughout your life. Some types of things become more natural to you. That's the idea here. What are your natural talents? Like, so for me, I love music, but it's a struggle. I took piano lessons and I thought I was going to be a gifted pianist. And as soon as I was going to be the next Mozart, but no, that wasn't there for me. Kinesthetic, I thought I was going to be a baseball player, football player, no, wasn't there for me. So my life is a series of reduction, right? So I was mathematical, nature, that's a tree to me. Some people can see nature and demonstrate what kind of flower that is, what kind of tree. I'm like, oh, it's a tree. So for me, my smarts would be intrapersonal. So that's within people. Also linguistics, I've always just had a natural ability to capture words, and intrapersonal. So it's just kind of a way to think about what you're naturally talented at and what you can enhance. That's the thing. Again, go with this strengths mentality, I would think. And you can look this up, multiple intelligence theory. Again, it's just a great way to start a conversation. And we all know what I mean. If there's a class, a dance class, for example, and I go to it, everyone else can pick up a movement. And I'm just the last one just trying to figure out what in the world, right? So I'm okay with that, right? So I channeled therapy helps with that, right? But I was able to channel my energies towards what I actually was better at, right? And that's why I decided my major was between sociology and psychology. That was what I was thinking back in the day, following these things, making the decisions that you are. So these are the types of things that you're thinking about. What are your interests and what are your talents? Holland Code is about interests, and multiple intelligence, an idea about what your talents are. And the learning professional pathways, I think, was I going to give this to you, Carolyn?
Yeah, so this is an approach that the college is taking to try to help students kind of, again, find their major, find what the best fit is, but grouping individual majors together in a way where there are majors that share commonalities, so students can start from the more general area and then slowly focus in on which individual major within each pathway they might find the most interesting. Hopefully that made sense. Sorry, I was trying to get that all out without just reading this. But yeah, the college is going to start reorganizing into these learning and professional pathways. Can you switch the slide, Kevin? Sorry, okay. So I think it's 8 learning and professional pathways at GCC are listed here. Language and communication is the one we're going to be specifically focusing on tonight. But if you're not quite decided, you can kind of skim through these, and there will be a separate workshop for each of these in the next week and a half or so. Next slide. Okay, so what's that?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
Okay, so again, the Holland Code interests that most align with the language and communication, learning and professional pathway are social, enterprising, and artistic. Like Kevin said before, do not despair if you feel kind of like, oh, I don't know if that's me and I really do want to be an English major. There's absolutely room for you to be an English major and do really well. So these are, again, just the trends. It doesn't necessarily mean it's prescriptive. And I'm not going to read each one, but yeah. And then as far as the multiple intelligences, the ones that kind of most closely align with this pathway would be linguistic, interpersonal, so in skills between people, and intrapersonal. I don't know if I flipped those, but one is like personal knowledge and really knowing yourself versus like knowing how to interact well with others. And then so next, let's see. So this is the language that this learning and professional pathway came up with to describe itself. So this I am going to read because this is important as far as knowing if you resonate with this. Are you interested in exploring the languages, literatures, and cultures from around the world? Do you love connecting with people through language, written, verbal, or both? Are you someone who loves a good story? Choose this pathway to explore and understand varying perspectives of humanity and connection through writing, literature, media, and language. So you see that this is broad. I mean, language and communication is kind of the commonality, but you know, we have written, spoken, media, so lots of different outlets of the same types of skills. Let's see. Oh, and these are the specific GCC majors that are currently aligned in this particular pathway. So again, you can kind of skim through it. I don't need to read it to you, but we do have representatives I know from communication studies, English, foreign languages, mass communication and journalism. Am I missing anybody who's here? Okay, so we do have faculty representation for a lot of these majors tonight. And then is there, yeah, okay.
Okay, thank you so much for that informative presentation, and it will be now on to our Q&A portion of the evening. And once again, if you guys have any questions, please send them to Elise in the chat. And now we are honored to be joined by some amazing faculty members, and I will be turning them over to introduce themselves, starting with Dr. Harnett, followed by Dr. Cohen, Professor Smith, Professor Hernandez, and Professor Girardi.
Thanks, Diana. Hello, everybody. My name is Michael Harnett. I teach English, humanities, and educational psychology, and I'm also the Scholars Program Director.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Cohen. I teach journalism under the language arts umbrella, and I have been at GCC since 2013. I'm really glad to be here, and I'm happy to see all of you.
Hi, my name is Nick Smith. I teach speech communications, public speaking, interpersonal communication, group discussion, and various other courses.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Maria Hernandez, and I teach Spanish. I am in the Language Arts Division, and we have an excellent program. Thank you.
Hi, welcome. I'm Lourdes Girardi. I'm the Language Art Division Chair, and I teach Spanish.
Thank you so much. So this first question is for anybody. A lot of students at the community college level are undecided, and we want to know, how did you decide on your area of study and what school did you go to?
I could contribute something here. I teach communication. I always had a passion for screenwriting, and I'd written some articles and done a few oral presentations. So I wanted to learn more about improving those skills. Where did I go? Cambridge University, Master of Philosophy, and I went to Pepperdine and did an MA in communication.
I'd love to add something here. I always say to my students that I didn't choose journalism, it chose me. It's interesting how you have to learn where your skill set lie before you choose a major. And for me, it was about taking a variety of classes. For a while, I thought I wanted to be a Spanish major, and then I realized I just couldn't get the accents right, and I didn't have the head for language the way some people did. I really think it's a gift, but I was always really good at writing, and I was good at writing opinionated pieces. So it was either going into the legal profession. I didn't think I had the headspace for it, and I was always afraid of the moral dilemma of having to defend someone who is not a good person. And so I decided to go into journalism, where I can cover current events, where I can talk about political corruption. And so I would say to you, it's okay to be undecided. And you have this amazing time to discover what it is that you want to do. And it might be taking classes that have nothing to do with your major. I think Nick is interesting in that he talks about communications. Some of the best classes I took were communications and speech-oriented classes, and it helped me to become a better speaker. It's not my major, but it gave me some concrete skills. So that's just a little bit about me.
I would like to add that my BA is in political science and public administration in Mexico City. And then I discovered that I enjoy teaching. So some people need time, and I was one of them. So now I'm teaching Spanish, and I'm teaching my culture, my language. Okay.
I knew from early on that I wanted to be a teacher since I was in elementary school, maybe because that's the first profession that we get in contact with. And that only change that I went through was what level. Pretty soon I realized I was not elementary school teacher. I love kids, but it's hard to keep their attention or teach them how to read or write. So as I study more, I went up in levels. So I have taught middle school, high school, and college. And it has always been my goal to be a teacher. I think it's the best profession. There's no boring day. Every day is different. Even if you're teaching the same class, 3 sections of the same class, it's not the same class because you, the students, actually make it great. But the skills, as they all mentioned, the skills that you learn in the different classes, you know, for example, in foreign language could be useful in any field of study. Communication is something, doesn't matter what degree you go after this, the communication skills are going to be the writing that you learn in journalism. You're going to use that in any career. It's a path. It's a path to find out where your interests are and where your skills are.
I can tell you my background. Sorry, Elise. So I'm from, my parents were both teachers. My grandmother was a teacher. My paternal grandmother was a nurse. So I've had a lot of background in people that were really trying to help people out. Also people that like to talk a lot. And so it was not hard for me to develop a love of reading. I was read to as a child. That's such a powerful influence. I've always loved books and communicating, writing, making up stories in the car from an early age. My mom always says that even at age 3, I'd be pointing out, you know, gas stations and parks and, you know, landmarks along the way. And so my students have told me I should be a tour guide when I retire. And I just love the whole situation. It took me a long time to really settle on a major. I started as an electrical engineering major because my dad said there were high starting salaries. And then I was a math and English major. My dad is a math teacher, so I thought that's sort of in my blood. And then I just realized English is what I like the best. And then I really wanted to help people with a degree, and educational psychology was a perfect compromise between the sort of statistical and mathematical and you know, the way you can set up an experimental design, and also the kind of communication and expression and creativity that the English degree and the major and the writing involve. And so it's been a great combination for me. And I went to USC as an undergraduate. That was the 4th place. I had always thought I would go to Berkeley. I was waitlisted at Stanford. I thought of Claremont McKenna. Santa Clara, I had a chance to play on the tennis team. And it ended up at USC. It was a great fit for me. First time in the big city.
Thank you so much, everybody. I know I personally want to be a teacher, and so that was like really inspiring to listen to. Before I pass it on to Diana for the next question, for the students who are here today, Could you please put in the chat what your major is or what you're considering majoring in, or if you're undecided? We really want to know. I think it would really help us kind of gear our questions for the rest of the evening. So I'm going to pass it on to Diana for the next question.
Okay, thank you, Elise. So our wonderful counselors talked about the Holland codes and personalities of different students. In your experience, what are the interests of students who enter the language arts LPP?
This question's for anybody, by the way.
I'll take on that one. I will say that at least for the languages, most of the students are interested in being a teacher. And they realize that not only that contact with their former students or parents is a way that they need to, even if it is in childcare from babies to older campus students. So that communication aspect. We have also students that are in the field of nursing that also see the advantage of having that language skills.
I can say that the English major and also the allied areas of creative writing and so on, probably most of the students majoring in that want to be lawyers. There is a small number that eventually, and I don't mean this in any pejorative way, but they realize that money isn't everything and that they might actually want to be teachers or work in the corporate world or in business and use the communication ability, the analytical ability, and the expression, the creativity that that English and writing involves. So that's sort of where people come from in our majors.
And if I could put my hat as division chair, and maybe Nick could actually explain a little bit more in the speech communication. Again, you see the lawyers, you see the public relations. Nick, do you want to expand on that?
Yeah, I was going to say, from my experience, I have a lot of students who want public speaking. They want to improve their public speaking skills. And obviously, Speech 101 is a requirement. So that's one of the main reasons. But as far as jobs in communication are concerned, I have students who are interested in public relations, marketing, journalism, television, lawyers, lots of different ones, developing critical thinking skills, improving their written and oral skills. So those are the skills and those are the main jobs that I've come across.
Thank you so much for those responses. I think a few people touched on this specifically for skills, but if anybody didn't get an opportunity to, our second question, or our third question now is, what skills specifically would you expect an individual in this LPP and in your classes to develop by the time they graduate? I guess we'll start with Dr. Harnett.
The skills that the students should be having would be the thinking, creativity, resourcefulness, which is usually funneled into the term research, organization, expression, and ultimately effective written communication.
I think if I could go next, in journalism, it's really broad-based skills. It's some of what Dr. Harnett was talking about with writing skills emerging out of the program with good writing skills, but it's also production skills. It's being able to think critically about issues, and it's creativity, because journalism, while it is a major where you're doing a lot of writing, it's also a major where you're learning a lot of production value and you're learning how to put together publications. And so my expectation for students is that they graduate with the ability to write well, but also graduate with the ability to put together a magazine, a newspaper, go out and take a series of photos and be able to add captions to create a photo essay. And so it is very interactive. And one of the things that I always pride myself on, I'm with Dr. Harnett on this one, and being a fellow Trojan, is that, you know, I think what I see from a lot of the faculty is we try to give you that USC style of education at a fraction of the cost. So a lot of what you're learning in our journalism program will set you up to succeed if you were to transfer, say, to USC.
I had to interact because we don't have USC to take all the glory. Some of us here are from UCLA, so go Bruin. And I will say that the skills that we're looking for I'm speaking for foreign language directly. Yes, we have the critical thinking. What else are you going to do in a class when there's all this grammar, there's all this vocabulary, and in order to participate in class, you have used your critical thinking skills. We have moved beyond the years, probably when I went to school, where learning a language was a memorization of rules. That is out the door. In every single foreign language class, we use a natural approach where it's a conversation between the instructor and the student. It's live on daily basis. Every single class, students are participating, students are creating language. So yes, you learn rules, you learn vocabulary that you have memorized, but the critical thinking aspect of it is on daily basis. You have to produce that language, speaking or writing. We also, another skills that you take out of a foreign language class is your understanding of the world. That is probably the class that forces a student that goes to a class where he doesn't know the language and puts that in a position to understand, not only acquire the knowledge about another culture, but also understand what, for example, immigrants go through, to learn another culture, to habits, the language, the traditions. And you learn that in a class and you experience it firsthand in a foreign language class. Obviously, communication, understanding, you share. I mean, we put them to work in groups, and those students, they depend on each other. They develop these skills, they improve their skills by that collaborative learning. And a lot of times the students go from one level to the other, maybe not planning. That's not their, no, they were going to take level one and do their requirements and be done with it. But they enjoy that. They create these friendships that then they go to the next level.
And to add to what Lourdes has just said, in speech communication, students learn to organize information through library research. There are certain essays, projects that they have to do. Problem solving, that's very much evident in the argument and debate course and in interpersonal communication. Critical thinking, we've heard about that, thinking outside of the box, original thinking, learning how to persuade, developing coherent arguments, providing evidence. And with public speaking, not only being able to talk in front of a group of people, but learning certain skills like vocal variety, eye contact, gesturing, and how you can use that in real world situations. So those are some skills that we learn in speech communications.
And that's a perfect segue to what I was thinking, because all these skills in this field lend itself surprisingly to sciences like med school. You stand out more as a med school applicant if you're an English or communications or speech major, because they're looking for intellectual diversity, which they can do sciences and write poetry. They can do complex math equations and communicate in an effective manner. In fact, the MCAT has more writing preference now, and also the interview is part of that too. But if you look at the stats, you're more likely to get into med school as a humanities major, which is pretty similar to this area, than you are as a bio major, because there's 10 times more people applying with bio than they are with English. So you stand out more. And all these skills, as we're going through this, it makes sense that they can work out in the medical community. Communicating, understanding, critical thinking, all those things will help you in not just med school, but pharmacy, dental, all those health areas.
I would like to add something also to what Professor Girardi said. Our classes are focused on communication, but communication in real situations. So we want to give to Spanish a practical use, okay?
Thank you for that. We'll be moving on to our next question. GCC, like all colleges, offer resources to help students. Did any of you guys utilize any resources such as tutoring, financial aid, student programs, etc., to help you get through college?
If I may add something, I think one of the reasons I love teaching at Glendale College so much is I see myself reflected in our student body. I came from a background where neither of my parents were able to go to school or even complete high school or middle school in my father's case. They were refugees in the Middle East. It was not very easy for them to go and pursue higher learning. And so for me, I was an EOP student. I benefited from that program. And I remember I didn't even really understand the difference between college and university when I was first trying to figure out exactly what to do in my education. And so I always try to tell all of our students, irrespective of what pathway they're choosing, to really find out what resources exist for you. And for me, I always say that I was a product of the Los Angeles Public Library too. There were so many resources that I used there, and that I credit with my ability to really grow as an academic and even go on to pursue a doctoral degree in education. And so I proudly tell our students, utilize EOP if you are eligible. Join student clubs. There are fantastic student clubs. Of course, there's associated student government clubs. I know that there are many faculty here who have mentored students in clubs and in many different ways. But most importantly, I think what students really need to remember is that there is a body of faculty and staff at Glendale College that care about their well-being. We have a center on campus for students that are LGBTQIA identifying. We have a multicultural center on campus. We have resources for students that maybe don't have the financial wherewithal to take on higher education. And it's because faculty and staff care and want them to do this. And we also have the ability for students without sort of financial means to essentially study for free at community college. And I think it's a great pathway to going on to a bachelor's degree if a student chooses to do that. And so I utilize so many of these resources, and I think I wouldn't be where I am without them. So please have no shame. I think as Kevin Meza was discussing this earlier, when you look at the difference between having a degree and not having one, you see your financial output just increasing so much more. And it's not just about the sheer dollars and cents. It's also about the ability to have access to better healthcare, to have better access to resources for you and your family. And it really is night or day. So I proudly utilize these resources, and I didn't know about them at the time, but I learned as I went. And so I would encourage you to do the same. We also have a food pantry on campus. We have resources for students, and faculty deeply care about our students, staff as well. I shouldn't just single out faculty there. We have some incredible staff members at GCC. And I think the bottom line, when you talk to all of my colleagues here, you're going to find that there are always ears that are willing to listen and that are willing to put you in touch with the proper channels on campus. No student situation is going to be the same, of course. But yes, I utilize these resources, and thank God that I did, because I wouldn't be where I am today without them.
It's my turn. So when I went to college about 3,000 years ago, we didn't have online databases. I used index cards. I used to spend about 8 hours a day in the library for 3 years. That was my number one resource. There were two graduate students who I used to talk to, and they helped me privately to learn how to write a good essay. But those are the only resources that I had. But the library is key, absolutely key.
That was a great dad speech, Nick. Appreciate that. Yeah, that's just like back in my day, right? Yeah, similar. Use your resources. When I transferred, I joined. I didn't know about the resources. I'm like, well, actually, that's a lie. I use a lot of resources at my community college. Financial aid, I didn't know to my second year, so I missed out on that opportunity the first year. I didn't realize how poor we were. You know, that's the thing. I didn't know until I started to apply for things like, whoa, yeah, we actually are in trouble. And then, but there's all these great resources. A lot of it's just first knowing it's there, and then having the courage to step up and apply and talk to people, use it. I use the equivalent of EOPS when I was at UCLA, it's called AAP. And I learned, I had a mentor there, a tutor, showed me how to navigate, kind of like Nick. We didn't have the internet back then. So it was supplemental reading. That helped me so much as an undergrad, supplemental thing. So you have your assignments and you can pull other resources of the card catalog and pulling things up. So you learn good, it's called academic cultural capital. You learn how to be a better student through learning from other students who have a little bit more wisdom than you, right? And professors. So today's like a really good start. And I'm sure all the professors here could meet with you and mentor you in their classes. They probably add that to it. You know, it's all about these conversations of being open to it and using resources.
Thanks, Kevin. That's actually a really great segue to our next question. But I do want to say that my mom's actually a librarian. And so to hear all of you shouting out the library system is fantastic. I'm sure she would love it if she was here right now. One of the things my parents tried to kind of instill in my brother and I is just really good study habits. So this is a question for anybody again. What habits should students develop in order to be successful in your area of study? We'll start with, I'm going to pick on you, Dr. Harnett, because I know that you talk about habits a lot during Scholars.
I'm ready, yes. And I speak from experience as a, hello, my name is Mike and I'm a chronic procrastinator recovering. It took me a long time to realize that you don't have to create pressure and be some kind of 11th hour hero and write your whole, like an essay. You don't have to write the essay in one night. I remember I had my history term paper. Diana's probably heard this already, but I had a term paper in freshman history class, ancient history. And I'm writing about it and I'm spending all night and I'm sick to my stomach the next day and I'm like an addict turning it in. I swear I'm never going to do this again. Probably took me 2 more years to realize, oh, so I can start it early and work consistently. And I started planning and actually using my planner that my mother gave me a planner before I went to college, and I didn't use it very well until probably that's end of sophomore year. I thought, okay, I'll give it a try, and I just started mapping things out. So it was daily. It was like, what is my identity? Is my identity a procrastinator that just goofs around and then does some kind of effort and thinking, man, that could have been better? Or do I work every day because that's what I do? That's who I am. I'm a learner. I'm a lifelong learner, and I want to get better. And so this is so important to me. I'm going to not neglect it. That's the first thing I'm going to do. And that was a big part of it. That was a really big part of it. And that converted me. I lost most of my hair, unfortunately, because of my procrastination, but I can be a cautionary tale to everybody else not to do it that way. And instead, be a planner, keep on it. That's what you do. That's who you are.
Okay, I will go next. I think the 2 main skills that you learn in foreign language, one of them is time management. There is a lot of material to cover. Our instructors scaffold the material in small chunks. So instead of some classes where you go the whole semester and maybe you have a midterm and a final, we give them a lot of assignments, daily assignments, and we give them a lot of short quizzes. Now that we have Canvas, we have really much moved to these little online quizzes. So we cover this material, there's a quiz. The little kind of increments that you force yourself to keep up, to stay with the task constantly. And the other part is the self-confidence. And I think Nick was be able to speak with it about for speech. Students are afraid of public speaking and students are afraid of speaking another language. But I think we create an environment that is welcoming, supportive, and we encourage students to speak. We're not going to learn a foreign language just to quote grammatical rules. We want to speak the language, we want to write in the language, we want to learn everything that is around that language. And those skills are skills that you'll learn obviously and succeed in a language class, but it will apply in any kind of job that you go into.
Yeah, and to add on to that, I know for most people, public speaking is very, very frightening. I mean, it's the number one fear. And in our classes at Glendale, the focus is on nurturing, creating a nurturing environment where people are not terrified. And we all are a bit nervous to start with. But in our classes, we get feedback from other students, lots of support from them, comments from the instructors, and reminders of, I actually send out, I think, 2 reminders a week, sometimes 3, telling people what they have to do. As long as you do the work on time, and there's lots of reading, if you plan, I always recommend keeping a diary or a planner, regularly logging into the course, communicating with me, not being afraid to ask a question, you will do fine. So working to the deadlines and not procrastinating. I notice a lot of students, when something's due, like on a Sunday, they'll be doing it Sunday evening, and I always encourage them to submit early. Very important.
Thank you so much for that, Professor Smith. I know that before coming to GCC, I was terrified of public speaking, and then being in an environment like this where I have to force myself to speak publicly, even though we're virtual, has been a lot of help for me. Does anybody have any advice about practicing their skills specifically?
I have one thing to say about journalism, and I think it may relate to some of these other fields, especially language. I've tried to pick up languages on the side in the last couple of years. I think when you're practicing skills, you have to remember that you're not going to be perfect. I think there's sometimes an overfixation that I see in students that I teach where they think that they're going to get it right. And sometimes people get discouraged if they don't get the grades that they want to get in the beginning. Grades are never meant to be punitive, certainly not at Glendale College. That's not the way we work. And Professor Girardi talked about the scaffolding that we use, and we try to introduce you to subject matter in small bites. But I think what students can do in anything is just to practice. I did not become a good writer because I was naturally born a good writer. I think there are certain things that might have some of an innate skill, but if you want to become a good speaker, a good public speaker, you need to practice. You need to get over that stage fright. It's easier said than done, but nothing worth having is ever achieved through ease. You're supposed to find some of your educational pathway uncomfortable in a good way to get you to where you need to be. If you have an English instructor who's looking at your work and they're telling you that you're overusing quotes, you should listen. And I say that because one of my best instructors was an English professor named Richard Kroll. He was Cambridge educated. I think someone mentioned studying at Cambridge, and he really changed my life because I was always a good writer, but he said to me, you could be better. And I think it was a wake-up call where I was used to getting A grades and then I get a B, and it was sort of a shock. And so I realized that if I wanted to become a good writer, I needed to keep practicing. I needed to keep reading. It's not just going to come natural. You know, a good athlete doesn't become a good athlete overnight. They're practicing, they're hustling, they're working hard at their craft. If you want to speak French or Spanish or Chinese, you're going to have to practice that language. It's not going to be innate. You're going to have to immerse yourself in it. And so I think in everything that I try to do professionally, I remember there's always room to grow. Even now, even when you're a professor, even when you have a doctoral degree, there's still room to grow. I still can become better at what I do. And I think that sort of humility as you approach your work will get you far. And use a planner. I think a couple people said don't procrastinate and use a planner. I religiously use a planner. It is one of the things that I started to do when I was in college. If I procrastinate, I break out in hives. So for me, I almost have a reaction and anxiety if I do procrastinate, so I don't do it. But I think using a planner is something that will really benefit students into remembering when they need to practice. Practice your speech, you know, before you deliver it for a class. If you want to become a journalist, tape yourself just for yourself doing, you know, anchoring bits. You have to practice, or you're not just going to get better miraculously. You could be a great person, but you may not be good at a subject matter if you're not willing to put in that work.
I would like to say something here about practice. We expose our students to the language, to the culture, and also we live in California, so they have a lot of opportunities for practicing the Spanish language here.
And to add on to that one, as far as public speaking is concerned, only a fraction of your fear is visible. I know that's hard to believe, but you may feel terrified deep down inside, but we hardly see it. We might hear your voice shake a little bit. But so only a fraction of your fear is visible. Practice, as we've heard, is key. I also would like to stress the importance of reading the assignments carefully. And reading my comments on a speech. I often have students say, why did I get this grade? And I say, well, did you not read my comments? So it is important to do the reading. That's my bit.
Thank you for that. Now moving on to our following question. As we are in the current remote state, a lot of students are feeling unmotivated from the many historical events from this year, not to mention the pandemic of COVID-19, but in general, there are times when it is easy to be unmotivated about school. Do you have any advice for students to stay motivated and complete their goals? What do you believe is important for students to stay involved?
I will say the number one thing for students in RSI is for them to connect. Right now, we're seeing the teachers have their video on, and most of the students were getting their names or their image. It relaxes you. They don't see my face, so then you could tend to do something, get distracted. So while we are in remote, my number one advice to students is turn on that video. There are many things that you could do. Put a screen, everybody has a wall in their house, put your computer, you know, so your back is to the window, to the wall. But that's one way to stay connected. You are in the class, it forces you to be alert. And if you're alert, you're engaged in that class, and then you learn more. You don't miss the assignment. You don't miss the comment that the teacher might be making. That then, I mean, some students try to go to the chat or the recordings, and my God, you know, what comes out in the chat has nothing to do with what is being said. It is not the best technique in that part. It's not a support. So there's nothing like being in class and being engaged in a class. Also, we're going through a lot, you know, the pandemic is one of them, the economic pressure, the family situation that everybody's going through. Sometimes being in a class, I've had students in the past that saying, you know, I'm going through all these stressful things in my life, but I come to class, and for that 1 hour and a half, 2 hours, I'm away of it all. It's like therapy for them, because you get engaged, you learn something, you laugh with your classmates, you're learning, but it does a lot more than just the facts, only the information in the class. So being engaged in the class is the number one thing that you could do right now. It gives you something. What else are you going to do? You can't go to Disneyland, you can't go to the beach, you can't meet with your friends, you can't go out and party. Hey, you have a party on Zoom with your friends.
I agree with you 100%. And also, I think part of motivation is communicating any concerns you have with me, sending me an email. I got 13 messages yesterday. Someone was having, 2 people were sick. There was the whole Armenian situation, and I was very understanding. And I think it is important for instructors to be able to communicate that that understanding. And that certainly will help you to feel more motivated.
And I love the field of motivation. That's my doctoral field. And I think that part of a key to dealing with a difficult situation is learning to cope by changing attention, changing your consciousness. Instead of, college is such an inherently selfish enterprise. It's about me and my major and my career and my preparation and my grades. And instead, and this is something we try to do in Scholars, sure, it's an academic work, it's an academic program, but it's also a program about reaching out to other people, changing and shifting your point of reference from yourself to others. And in so doing, you get out of that woe is me mentality and into something really positive, maybe controlling what you can control. And those things that we can't control, we hope things work better, but at least we shift our attention. So that's one thing we might do.
I'm just going to speak up as a counselor here too, and just say, like Professor Smith was saying, reach out to your professors and let them know what's going on with you, but also reach out to the various resources available at Glendale, whether that's a counselor or the health center. There are so many resources here to help you. That being said, I think it's important to recognize that these are really hard times, and we don't, of course, want to just wallow in it, but sometimes just acknowledging that, maybe you do have a lot more going on right now than you normally would. And that might mean taking one less class, but you're still making forward progress and really keeping your eye on that fact. And, if it takes you an extra 6 months or an extra year to get this degree versus not getting it, it's not going to really seem like a big deal in the long run. And just remembering to take care of yourself, doing whatever you need to do. Like I know Professor Girardi was saying, come to class, turn your camera on. That's definitely really important. I think on the flip side of that, we all know how fatiguing it can be to be on Zoom all day, but when you're a student, you have to do it. And so, get off the screen when possible, go outside. Sometimes to me, just if I'm feeling a little bit stale and I just bring the computer even with me outside, just the change in air pressure makes a big difference on my mood. So if you like to exercise or meditate, again, just that self-care to help take care of yourself so you can be the best student you can be in these really tough circumstances.
I think if I may add, some of the top challenges that I know my students in journalism have faced deal with technical issues. And I think for all of the instructors, we try to be sensitive to maybe Zoom kicking you off. As the counselor just mentioned, this is a pretty difficult time. So trying to find a good place in your home, in your apartment, where there's a quiet space is often key, a place where you can do your work. And the number one thing, if you're struggling with staying motivated, is trying to figure out what the distractions are and try to limit them when you're in class or when you're trying to do work. And while there is a lack of that in-person interaction with online learning or that feeling of it, I think more and more instructors are trying to be personal, be personable, I should say. And so we're all adapting to unfamiliar technology, I think the faculty members included, and I think we're just going to get so much better at it. I think, as Professor Smith mentioned, it's going to be very key for you as you continue both at GCC and hopefully when you transfer to a four-year institution, to communicate with your instructors. If you are going through hardship, you do have counselors, you have resources on campus, but your instructor should know about it. And I share this because the number one thing I hear from faculty members is that we wish we would have known. And sometimes you'll be surprised if an instructor understands what's going on, they will work with you. And if we understand that you have family members in Armenia and you're stressed out, we will work with you. If you're impacted by Black Lives Matter rallies, we want to know about it because you do matter, but we can't know if you don't tell us. We can do a lot of things, but we can't read minds. So we also ask for your help. And that's also a skill you should take with you, is communicating with your instructors. And that may mean if you have an instructor for a 3-hour class, and it's starting to feel like you need a bathroom break, you need to go make yourself a cup of tea, you may want to write in the chat privately to the instructors if possible to take a bio break. I know that I'm very fond of giving students bio breaks. I need them too. Sometimes you need a cup of coffee, you need to stretch, but ask. If you don't ask, you'll never know.
I would like to make a brief comment here. One of my students, he was absent. So I contacted him because he didn't say anything. You know, he was working, he needed to work, and they moved the schedule. So after we talk, now he goes to his job and he connects to Zoom to the class. And I'm totally fine for me. It's totally fine for me. Okay. So it's communication again.
Thank you so much, everybody. I know that as student leaders and as members of the ASGCC, one thing that we really try to do is encourage each other, but also encourage our classmates to speak up. And we try to be the role models, but it's not always the easiest thing in the world. And we really appreciate really understanding faculty such as yourself. So to move on to our next question, kind of staying in the realm of advice giving, but shifting gears a little bit more to careers. How can students make themselves more marketable to employers and get a job after graduation?
Well, in our case, for Spanish classes, we have a lot of opportunities in business, in health, in customer service, anything, because a very important number of people speak Spanish here. So I think we are marketable if you speak Spanish and you have something else, another skill in your resume.
We have created in all foreign languages certificates. So in all major languages, we have a certificate. It's only 18 units. So the idea is, I mean, what is that going to do for you? Who knows? You never know. The more little papers, certificates, degrees that you can walk out of Glendale College with, the better. You never know what expects you in life. I have a student several years ago was applying for a job. And yes, it was very competitive. And then in just chit-chatting conversation, tells the employer, the interviewer, that he has taken all these classes in Spanish. Oh, really? So how long? How many semesters? How well can you? Then all of a sudden that person it changed his attitude from an interviewing to someone that was really interviewing him. And he got the job. What did it do? I think at the end they gave him, and this is many years ago, I think it was $100 a month or something like that. Big deal. Okay, $100 a month gives you your Starbucks fix for the month. So now and that's why we work so hard to developing this certificate. So now you have a paper from London College telling you, yes, you have the skills, someone that knows that language. So that is one easy way. Take the classes, go in the sequence, and get those classes. Even you could add a class like a history or linguistic class. There could also, in Italian, we have an art class. So look at what classes you have taken or you have to take for your other degree, and maybe you are ready to get a certificate and walk out of here with a certificate. Having a second language is always going to be a skill that is advantageous in looking for a job.
And we have all the information for the certificates in our page in Language Arts.
Mm-hmm.
So if I may add, one of the things that we like to do in journalism is we have final assignments for two of our classes, Journalism 103 and 104. And it is a final unlike most other finals that you will have because it really focuses on your career trajectory. You put together a portfolio and it's online because of the COVID-19 realities. In the past, it's been an actual physical portfolio that you have to take with you when you go to job interviews. Now, I do this in journalism, but I don't see why this isn't something that could be replicated in many other industries. I think you're hearing from amazing faculty in languages and speech and English. what employers are looking for is clips of your work. And so you may want to think about putting together a website for yourself, something with your CV, your resume, essentially, something with shared clips, things that you've done in your career that you're proud of. And not every student might be there right now, but it's something that you may want to work towards. And you can create a free website on wix.com, and when you're ready and you want to purchase your domain, that is something that you can do, so that when an employer is looking you up in the future, it's the first thing they see. They'll see that you have that Spanish language certificate from Glendale Community College. They'll see that you're an amazing photographer and that you have these fantastic clips. They'll see examples of your writing if you published, with a campus newspaper. But I think employers are looking for, tangible clips, things that they can look at, listen to, and see. And that's something that I always recommend. If you are looking for that next step, you want to start thinking about, building a physical portfolio, an online website, or potentially even looking at building yourself by taking other classes and gaining skills. I think, even with a doctoral degree, I'm still taking classes. And when I take those classes, I go and I update my LinkedIn page, and I have gotten job offers through LinkedIn. And so you also want to focus your attention on building your LinkedIn profile as you're approaching graduation, finding faculty members, staff, individuals that are free and feel comfortable making a connection with you and asking for those recommendations to set you apart from other people in your age cohort, and putting down all those certifications that you have. So definitely think about a website, think about your LinkedIn profile, and most importantly, and I mean this with compassion, think about what you're putting online on your social media pages. I've done a lot of the hiring side of things. You want to think before you tweet. You want to make sure it's not coming across as way too opinionated, depending on what work you're going to do. If you're planning on working with a government agency or a government job, you want to think about what you're putting up there, what image you're projecting, because all of that is part of your digital footprint, and that thing is there to stay. So just a piece of advice that I always share with our students who are looking to work for the alphabet soup that make up the media industries.
Thank you, Dr. Cohen. I was actually going to mention creating a website. I think that's really important. I teach Speech 117, which is professional voiceover. And so there's a whole module on how to create your website. I was also going to suggest giving presentations on YouTube, or even doing podcasting, writing articles and so forth. Question for Dr. Cohen. Do you offer any internships for students in journalism?
So I will say we are open to having all of you contribute to our campus publications, especially those of you that have speech writing abilities, those of you that are taking English classes and know how to write. God bless our English instructors, because we're often looking for content. You do not have to be a journalism major to write for our campus publications. And while we have been very newsprint heavy, we publish 12 newspapers a year. Because of COVID-19, we're really hoping that we're able to navigate towards magazines, 3 magazines that are going to be massive in size. So we'll give you more information as we get there. But what we do offer, or what I offer students in journalism, is while we can't give you an internship directly through a program, there are opportunities that I will help put you in touch with. And one thing many of our journalism students have done is, once they get their writing to where it needs to be, is those students then go and write for Glendale News Press. They'll go and they'll contribute one-offs to LA Weekly or to LAist. And so you do have opportunities to make money, and several of our students in journalism have had that opportunity. We're also always looking for opportunities to work with organizations that provide grants and scholarships to students. And so that's something we really pride ourselves on in the journalism program, is getting you essentially money to help you achieve the next step. And scholarships are competitive, so it's always the work that you're willing to put in, but I'm going to be there encouraging you along the way.
I just want to add really quick too, no matter what your major is, I work with, as a career counselor, I work with a lot of students trying to find their first job. And a lot of entry-level jobs will want like a year of experience, and it's this weird catch-22. Like, how can I get a year of experience if I just got my degree? The answer is generally an internship. And so this is something that every single student, no matter what your major is, I really want you to think seriously about when you can do an internship. A lot of employers, I was just at a workshop the other week, a lot of employers are looking for ways to turn their internships virtual so students aren't missing out on this. If an internship doesn't work out for you, think about volunteering in some capacity in the field that you want to go into. Like, for instance, you know, if you want to be a teacher, you know, there's may not be like a formal internship, but you may be able, of course, to volunteer to help a teacher out with their grading, or work as a tutor, something that's related to what you want to go into. Often those can, of course, lead to jobs, but even if it doesn't, you're growing your professional network and you have something to put on your resume. So I would definitely say explore internships, or there's even, again, in this workshop, this is something I picked up, there's a greater exploration of micro internships just in this environment we're in. And that could be, rather than an internship, sometimes it's a whole semester or an academic year. A micro internship might just be a single project that you're working on. And so that kind of relates to what Dr. Cohen was saying, as far as like writing a single article as a freelancer for an actual publication, just as one example.
Thank you for all those amazing tips, everyone. For our final question of the night, looking back on your educational career, is there anything you would have changed? And do you have any final tips for students?
I want to be honest. I wish I would have gone to community college. I didn't, not for my first 2 years, but that's actually kind of untrue too. I took some college classes at Valley College when I was in high school, and I enjoyed them more than most of the undergraduate classes I took, because I remember going to UC Irvine for my undergraduate career, and the lecture halls were so massive. And I'm pretty sure most of those instructors never knew my name. Even if you come out with a great grade in the class, you're not developing rapport. I think what sets all of these instructors apart here is that they are willing to listen to you, to mentor you. They want to see you grow, and you get mentorship at the CC level. So if I could change something, I think rather than rushing straight to a four-year university when I graduated, I would have attended a community college, because I probably would have not only saved money, but I also would have been able to navigate and figure out more quickly what it was that I wanted to do. But other than that, I think, you know, I'm glad that I took the path that I did. I'm so proud of all of the students who are here and spending their dinner hour with us. And I just want to again thank you. But you're doing it right in being at a community college, and you're doing it right by finding out about these resources. You have incredible counselors at GCC. You have incredible resources at GCC. And I know it's hard to really utilize those resources because we're not always thinking about them, but it's a good time to maybe explore them as you shift into the holiday season, so that when you come back next semester, you know what exists for you and you can utilize it a little bit better. There are career resources at GCC. And so those are things you might be able to tap into, including maybe postings about jobs. I know that the social media pages for Glendale College are routinely posting information about jobs. I'm not sure who manages it. I think it might be Nadine Levyfield and a few others, but whoever is doing it, like, kudos to you, because I'm looking at it and I'm resharing it and trying to tell my students about it. So definitely try to also follow those social media pages if maybe you're not as plugged in as you'd like to be. That may be one good starting point.
I can add something here. I wish I had, when I was at university, I met somebody who said, you need to divide your day into three: work 2/3 and take 1/3 off. And I did that when I was at Cambridge, and it worked really well. And I didn't do that when I was at high school or middle school. I was always playing soccer, and to the extent that I was bottom of the class constantly and was forced to leave school at 17. And I had to get my GED at 2 community colleges where I was for 4 years. And I think the community college experience was actually very, very beneficial because it was much more personal contact as opposed to what it was at school. But working 2/3 of the day and taking 1/3 off, that was a really great model for me. That's my input.
I'm just going to jump in and say, just push yourself to get involved, like a little more than you're comfortable doing. When I was in school, I did start at community college. I had to work full time. Just a lot was going on just in my personal like family of origin. So I was working 30 to 40 hours a week my whole way through. I would, take about 9 units a semester to get through. It was very hard for me, honestly, to be involved. And that was something that I found that really made it hard for me to like transition to the workforce. I didn't have as strong of a network as I could have. And I know we've all heard it's not what you know, it's who you know. A lot of that is really true. Pretty much every job I've gotten, not 100%, but like 90% has been because I knew somebody at the place that was hiring. So even if you're very busy and it's really hard for you and you can't, maybe do something like student government, like that's wonderful. Those, for Elise and Diana and the others who are involved in that, that's a great leadership opportunity. But if that's like just too much for you, whether it's just having 1 or 2 faculty mentors, one club that you attend once a month, just whatever it can be, push yourself a little bit to get involved because it can really enrich you in ways that you may not expect.
I will share from my own personal experience, like getting involved in ASGCC has been a blessing, I think. It's given me a lot of great opportunities, but outside of ASGCC, even talking to my professors has been really, really helpful, kind of in the same way that we're doing now and talking about like job opportunities and everything. So thank you. Unless anybody else. I noticed that Kevin unmuted his mic, so I don't know if he has advice. He probably does.
That's funny. Yeah. Good eyes. I was going to say, like, according to the educational research, and I always present this, Harnet's probably heard this a bunch of times from me, but your time and your energy are your most important resources as a student. So what you do with that will determine a lot. Also be open. I started community college just accidentally. I come from a couple generations of factory workers, nothing wrong with that, but I didn't think school was for me. I took some classes to be a firefighter and I just started doing homework and I started to emerge as an academic and I had no idea. So be open to your skills, push yourself, take challenging courses, challenging and supportive courses, get the resources on campus and you'll develop. And I think for all of us here, we love what we do. We want you to have that same experience, get that right match for you.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Anybody doesn't have anything else, that's all the time that we have for today. If you had any questions that we didn't answer during this workshop session, please email me at asvp@glendale.edu. I'll put my email and all the information in the chat, and we will try to get your questions answered. I will be putting the survey in the chat right now. So if you have not filled that out, which none of you have, please fill that out as soon as you can. That'll really help us kind of figure out what we can do better with the series. If there's anything that we did well, we'd like to hear about it, obviously. And I hope that everybody stays safe and enjoys the upcoming holiday seasons. I'm going to pass it on to Diana for a final announcement of the night.
Yes, thank you, Elise. Thank you again to all our counselors and faculty members who are here tonight. The GCC community is so lucky to have you all, and I mean that genuinely. We have more workshops this week and next week. If you're curious to know about other learning and professional pathways, we encourage you all to join us at those. Please visit www.associatedstudentsgcc.com or as.gcc on Instagram for more information. Thank you again.